histories of abandoned spaces that I've been to. And that's really kind of what my work is about, right? It's photographing abandoned places and then researching their histories and sharing them with people and trying to figure out what makes them special, unique, and relevant. So, there we go. Let's, I think the first thing that, people usually ask me about when it comes to this subject is, why did I get into it? It's kind of a weird thing. Like, I get it. I've been in a great many abandoned buildings, and that is to most people a bit odd. So, sort of getting into how that happened in my life. I started out working in mental health. I actually worked for quite a while at Phil Haven, if any of you are familiar with Phil Haven. So my dad lives in Gretna. I am from this area. But I lived in Philadelphia for a while, too. And as I was working at this adult inpatient facility, I met people that had either been patients at or staff at Philadelphia State Hospital, or Byberry as it was known. This right here is a picture of Byberry, and basically the thing about Byberry that you can kind of see here, it's a very large campus. I mean, it was a pretty prominent building, and as I read about it more and as I got more and more into it, I realized, this thing's just sitting there. It's sitting there abandoned, and I thought to myself, well, why don't I go see it? Why don't I go to this building and see what it's actually like, since I've been doing so much research on it? And to make a long story short, I went to this campus, which is, I think it's 140 acres and 160 acres, 40 buildings, miles of tunnels. I always get the 4 and the 6 confused. I'm sorry, but it's the 140 and anyway. So I went to this building, and it was kind of like almost a sort of revelatory or quasi-religious experience for me, because here's this place that I've been reading about and hearing so much about, and I'm actually in it. I mean, this is like a real place. The things that I read about actually really happen, and I think we all know that when we read about a thing. You don't read a book and think, oh, well, this person's just lying to me about everything. Eastern State Penitentiary never existed, but there is something very different about actually being there and perceiving it. So I wound up going back there quite a few times, and you might be thinking at this point, why are we staring at this picture for so long? You're a photographer. Well, I wasn't a photographer at that point. And it's probably one of the great sorrows of my life is that I don't really have any good pictures of this place. But the one thing that I found as I was going here was that I was trying to explain to people why this was so significant and why it mattered to me. And people are just sort of looking at me with this glazed look like, well, something's really wrong with you if you're going back to this place again and again. I was like, no, it's amazing. I mean, I went through, these pitch black underground tunnels and came up through a half-collapsed boiler house and went out into an overgrown courtyard with burnt buildings all around me, and a wild turkey ran in front of me. Like this, it's just a very surreal experience to be in a place where you look around and it feels like this is the whole world because it's that big. So anyway, let's talk about the history of the asylums and why it matters a bit to me, and why it was so meaningful to me. Because Byberry in particular was a place that, all of the asylums, all of the state hospitals had really dark histories. Byberry for state hospitals was dark. They had these wards where, people didn't even have clothes. There was, just this level of neglect that was there. The buildings were falling apart. There was an expose that was done in the 40s where somebody snuck pictures of this place. And, it was really shocking because, and I know this is sounds like hyperbole to say it, but if you mixed in all of the pictures that you had there with a concentration camp, it would be hard. You would get most of them right. But I think, we should hopefully all agree that there should be none that are wrong. You should have no ambiguity over whether this is an American institution or that. So when you look at these places, you had thousands of people, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. It is blurred out in case anyone's wondering. That pass through these places and then were essentially forgotten, right? I mean, it could be your your mom or your grandmother or your aunt or your dad or, your son. And there were so many reasons that people were committed to these places for. And this is a subject that I actually can really get on a roll with, and this isn't really the primary focus of the presentation. I'm just sort of trying to tell you where my interest in it lies. But it just was sort of appalling to me, I think, that there were all of these people that had been in these places. And, there's so much stigma attached to people who had been in these buildings. And, their families might not have talked to them. They might never have known what happened to that person. They died. They get buried under a little numbered disc in the graveyard. And then the key to who's underneath what number is lost, I mean, that's a really kind of atrocious thing. And so it was very meaningful to me to, hang on here, there we go. And this is what we kind of think of asylums as now. This is what asylums are in pop culture, right? It's this kind of like spooky haunted house view that we have of this place, where it's a setting for a horror TV show or something like that. But the actuality of it, like the real lives of the people, I felt were lost. So anyway, this is, as you can tell, I get a bit riled up about this. I feel like, if you tear down all the buildings, and then what you have is this sort of falsified representation of it, the real history and the real people are lost. And that was something that just was really upsetting to me. So right here, this is Norwich State Hospital. One thing that you may or may not know about the asylums is that towns were really proud of them when they were built. I mean, they competed to get state hospitals in them. And then they had things like this, where they put out a postcard of the building that you would send to other people. That's how notable they were. And you can also see, I mean, they're gorgeous buildings. So note here that, do I have the right button? Note here that's Norwich. And hopefully it'll, sorry, give me a second here. Oh, thanks. I'm going to turn this off and on. I think maybe the battery might be going. There we go. Cool. Nope, but I can't go back. So this right here is Norwich. And this is not the exact same building that you were looking at in the postcard, but this is present day, right? So how do you go from a place that there's this kind of hope and ambition for? These are going to be like the last word on how we're dealing with people who, how we're assisting people who have mental health issues, who may have physical or mental disabilities. And, they're built at this huge expense, they're enormous properties, and then like a century later, this is what they are, and they're vanishing too. I mean, this building is long gone. Hey, there we go, cool. That is one of the porches for this. And I think, there are always these little details that stand out to me as well, like the, the screens on the, and, oh, hang on, I'm going to just see if, let me just see if I can get this work rather than going through the, yeah, rather than advancing manually, I'd like to do it, or on my own, I'd like to see if I can do that. I'm sorry. Can you give me 2 seconds? Can I just see if I can get the clicker switched real quick? I have one. I'm going to just switch out the battery and see if that'll help. Pardon me, technical difficulties. Okay. We are back. All right, let's hope this works. Sorry about that. I just am very easy to derail in terms of my train of thought. So anyway, the point is, like, you look at rooms like this. This is a dormitory room. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's something in the image that, like, I could tell you about this room, you know? I mean, obviously there's that kind of the old chestnut about a picture being worth 1,000 words, but I feel like it works that way with emotions of a place and meaning of a place as well. There's just something about seeing something like this that to me hits me on a different level. So that was kind of why I got into photography, to show these places. And also, there are other aspects that we don't consider too. Like, you know, now we have this kind of perception of asylums as, you know, like this sort of, you know, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Nurse Ratched, you know, of people that worked in them as being, you know, all oppressive and you know, treating the people who are in there badly. But that's not true either. I mean, there were a lot of people, and I know this, I mean, I can say this firsthand from working in the mental health system, there are a lot of people that it is very important to them to help people. They work very hard to do that, and, you know, they don't necessarily always have the, you know, the resources for it. I think kind of the three things that you always run into with any mental health facility, regardless of what period, is, you know, underfunding, overcrowding, understaffing, you know. But when you look at stuff like this and you see, oh, they had a bowling alley, they had a really nice pool, they had a beautiful auditorium that they built, and you can start to realize that this is maybe a little less of your kind of standard villains and heroes story, maybe, and more of something that's akin to a Shakespearean tragedy, where people really put a lot of effort into doing something that they thought was going to help people, and then it just went right off the tracks. Whoops. Let's go back one. This one right here is actually near where I live now. I live in upstate New York now, and this one, you can see that's another postcard view, Hudson River State Hospital. This place was like half a mile from tip to tip in terms of the wings. When you think of a Kirkbride hospital, which is what these are, they're kind of like bat-shaped, you know? And as you go out further in the wings of the buildings, they would have people that were more ill. And so this place right here, I mean, you can see that's a gorgeous, like, high Victorian building. And again, I mean, I can sit here and kind of, you know, explain to you, I can kind of explain to you what makes this building so cool and unique and special, and why it's something that I feel is important to the community, is something that should be preserved. That's a thing that really matters a lot to me. But being able to show you an image of, this is just the administration section, by the way, being able to show you an image of that, I think, conveys a little more. And right now, this is the, let's go back one, this is the current condition of the building. It has had more fires than I can count at this point. They're supposedly trying to save the administration section, but you can see if you look that, like, these wings right here, I mean, they're almost a shell. I mean, that's it. And there's going to come a point, and it's not very long, where it's going to be gone. And you know, that ability to kind of recognize it as a real place that is not just a fairy tale is going to be gone. So this right here is the Curry building. It's one of the newer ones. And just as an example of that point, there's a shop right there now. So I actually went there. It was a very surreal experience because part of the previous building that I showed you is still there. So you're in the ShopRite parking lot, which is kind of, you know, a banal and everyday experience, right? Being in a supermarket parking lot. And through the darkness, I'm looking up at the hill, and there's like this lone spotlight on the front of this like abandoned asylum there. It's just like, it's such a strange, jarring thing to have kind of something that is that every day, and then something that's a little surreal and haunting up on the top of the hill. But anyway, yeah, so the point is these places are blinking out one by one. When I started doing this, I mean, when I went to Byberry, that was 2001 actually, and you know, there were tons of them, and now the majority of them are gone. Going around and exploring and photographing abandoned asylums is really not a thing in the community that I'm in at this point. And let me show you the interior of the building too, just so you can see how absolutely terrifying and dangerous it is. This was a really, really not stable building, as you might see from this picture. I actually, when I took this shot, I had to go from that doorway to that floor. And let me tell you, that was one of the scariest moments in my life. Probably at that point it was. And then it was eclipsed by when I had to go from that floor to that doorway, because at least when I was coming from the doorway, I had the wall to hang on to. Kind of surprised that there aren't a bunch of like photographer skeletons, you know, and boards, impaled on boards in the basement. But you know, this was 2009 when that picture was taken. It has not got better. Time does not heal all wounds when it comes to buildings. This is a little bit more recent, and you can really get an idea of just the sort of structural damage that this place has had. And again, I mean, I think there's a very valid question, which is why would any sane human go into a building like this? And that is fair. I don't necessarily have an answer that's going to satisfy you with that, but part of the reason is because I feel it is important. I feel that, you know, the past of the building is important, but also the present, right? I mean, this particular moment in its time is something that's fleeting as well. That is a look down one of the patient's rooms. Little fun fact about, I don't think I'm going to have to talk most of you people out of going into abandoned buildings, which is good. I'm not seeing a lot of people here that are going to be trying to go around these places, which is, you know, smart. That's smart people. But one of the things that you see when you see older buildings like this and how they deteriorate, particularly in the asylums, is they have a lot of this like sort of tongue and groove construction where the boards fit, you know, into the wall like that. And when your roof isn't good anymore, the water comes down and sort of melts off the edges of the boards. And so what you have is, you know, if you're a group of teenagers, if I were talking to a group of teenagers here that were going to go out and go ghost hunting after they see this at their local abandoned building, they're going to be looking around and not necessarily paying attention to the fact that the floor is about 6 inches lower than where it should be. You know, it's not necessarily a huge thing that you notice immediately, but if enough of that goes and the floor falls down, then it lands on the floor below it, pancakes down another level lower. And if you're on that, that's a real good way of dying, honestly, or getting hurt very badly. So this, by the way, is the only ghost I've ever seen. Everybody asks me about ghosts, and that's the only one, is my friend at the time under a sheet. So you have to forgive me too. I did update the presentation a little bit here recently, you know. So, but basically, one of the things that I kind of point out with this is just that a lot of times people ask me about ghosts, and I hate to be a boring guy and tell you I'm not a ghost hunter. I have never seen anything that indicates paranormal. I've been in places that I know have objectively horrifying histories by myself, and I have never run into anything. So either they're not there, or they just maybe don't like me, or they're just like looking out. I don't know. But yeah, getting back to this building, I mean, you can see like sort of the amount of effort and work that was put into these places, even when you look at like the stained glass windows and things like that. Tin ceilings, you know, that they have. I mean, this was a really, really fancy building. And yeah, I mean, this is pretty much where it's at now. The wings are going to get torn down. A little sliver of the administration building will probably be saved, and the rest of it will be turned into some sort of like shopping complex, you know. And again, I mean, I just, to me, that really is, you know, certainly people could debate it with me if they wanted. I've had people that said these places have terrible histories, they should all be torn down. And I would argue that, first of all, it's not the building. You know, it's not the building that did it, it's the people that were in it, that were the history of it. And second of all, I mean, just having a tangible piece of a community's history is so important. You know, in terms of like even the hegemony of what we have now. You know, you go to like the Walmart that's near my house, it's going to be the same as the Walmart that's near your house. You know, why do people travel? Why do people go to different places? It's because they're buildings that are a part of the history of a place, and at least in my opinion, that's what makes them interesting. So I'm going to just move on a little here. This is one of the many fires. This is not my picture. That is right down there. That's the credit. for it, just so you know. I'm not, in fact, that aerial photo, the black and white ones at the very beginning that were like from life in the 1940s, didn't take them either, but the other ones I did. I figured you probably would know that. This is the administration section in one of the many fires that they had. I believe one of them was like a 7-alarm fire, and I didn't know initially, but I guess the alarm level is like how many different fire companies come out to have to deal with it, which gives you a sense of just how bad it was. So this is another one. This is Taunton State Hospital. Taunton State Hospital was in Taunton, Massachusetts, and you know, again, there's a lot of stuff on these, like, I don't mean to plug my stuff, maybe a little, I sort of do, but the podcast that I have, which is free, and you can listen to it on, like, whatever platform you want, I just did an episode on Taunton that has a really interesting history. I'd love to tell you more about it, but the point of this picture right here is just, again, to show you the beauty that they had. This was a curved, elevated walkway. It was actually a sort of like a fire suppression device in a way, to prevent fires from spreading from ward to ward. And last I saw that was a picture that somebody had taken when it was like on its side in a pile of rubble as they were demolishing the building, which breaks my heart. That's probably my favorite picture of all of them. So, all right, let me tell you a little bit, now that I talked your ear off about that stuff, let me tell you a little bit about some of the places that I've been to. I have been to abandoned schools. This is the Abandoned Home School in Port Deposit, Maryland. It was one of the most prestigious secondary schools in the United States. This is the lobby of the administration building, like the Memorial Hall, I think it was. And this picture, one of the things that I can sort of tell you about it is, I went there also around maybe 2007, 2008. I wasn't really happy with the pictures that I took. And I kept thinking, I'll go back, I'll kick the can down the road. Finally, I did go back. I took this picture, which I am happy with. And then like 3 months later, some teenagers set it on fire. So you are constantly racing the clock with these places, and you never know what the end point of this is going to be. So it really does create a sense of kind of like urgency to this. This is a public school in New Jersey. I'm going to point out at this stage that there are a number of places that, and I think I make this point later. I'm making it a little early, but I'll make it now, and you'll forgive me later, I'm sure. A lot of times people ask me, well, where is that? What is that place? And there are places like this I'm not going to tell you. Like, sorry, I'm not. And part of the reason is because I have seen so many places get burned and vandalized and looted. And, you know, again, like, I think we have a very upstanding group here. I don't think anybody here is going to be running out to, like, go rip the finials off the staircase or anything. But when you put things out on the internet, you don't know who you're getting, and a lot of people aren't necessarily very cautious about it. And I have almost never seen a place fixed up or restored because people posted pictures of it all over the internet, but I have seen places get really, really vandalized over the course of a weekend that were fine for like 3 decades before that. This is another abandoned public school that I was at, and I put this up there just to point out that some of the places are actually in really good shape. You know, people tend to like the ones that are really decayed, so I post them a little bit more. But I mean, this one, really the only thing that I think would be kind of a giveaway is if you notice that probably wouldn't be happening in an open school. Hopefully it wouldn't. So yeah, I mean, this is one of a number of public schools in Pittsburgh that was closed. This is a fairly recent one. This is also up from my neck of the woods in upstate New York. This was the Bennett School for Girls, which is really one of about the coolest exteriors I think I've ever seen of a building, an abandoned building. It's just such a neat place, and this was during the demolition. Like, you could see the demolition fence. This thing also, as it went, claimed my drone. It's very sad. This is another public school that I went to, and a lot of people think those are like lemons. They're not. They're little footballs. They do look like lemons, I'll give you that. But this was in Gary, Indiana, and you know, I could talk a lot more about Gary, Indiana, and how just destroyed the economy was after the steel mills kind of picked up and moved out. But, you know, the schools were really the pride of the city, and so it's, I think, extra sad to see them be in the condition they are. This is another school building that, public school buildings, by the way, I will say my mom was a teacher. She's retired now. But I just feel like, in my opinion, that's one of the saddest losses, is like schools and libraries, to see them closed. Especially, again, when you look at this and you see, like, that's a really gorgeous auditorium, That's really beautiful, and it's such a horrible waste to see it left there like that. So that's another public school that I went to. Felt very, like, on the nose. Oh, okay. This one I just put up because it was like these stickers were like all popular when I was a kid, and so I got like a little nostalgic boost from the garbage pail kid stickers in the locker right there, that they're still there, and they were probably left there around when I was in school, which is kind of like a little weird. So this one right here, we're back at Gary again. Things that I look for in terms of these places, I mean, obviously there's architecture, there's historical significance. Also, I like to try and find things that are, kind of centered on the decay or how nature takes over places, or things that give you a sense of the people who are there. And this was, when I look at this, I'm like, this isn't one of the kind of picturesque romantic ruin pictures that I have, but it was one that I really stood at for a while, and just looking at all the pictures of all the kids and the teachers and stuff like that, and just thought, wow, like these were the people that were really affected by this. These are the people who, this cost was very real of this place closing. This cracks me up. It's not all depression and sadness in this. This kind of made me laugh because sometimes you see these notes the kids write their teachers before the school close, and if you can't read it, it says, "Dear Mr. Foray, even though you were very aggravating during the school year, you've helped teach me with a valuable lesson. Do your work on time. Thanks, and see you in summer school." I love the even though you were very aggravating. Like, we have to lead with that. So yeah, let's moving right along. Industrial sites. So this one is Bethlehem Steel in Pennsylvania. This is the gas blowing room. Probably one of the neatest industrial rooms that I've ever seen in my entire life. These locomotive-like engines would, I guess, blow gas into the furnaces. And actually now, if you go on the High Line that goes by there, which they've opened up to the public so you can walk up there, you can look down into this room. It's super cool. But that was one of my all-time favorites for industry. That is another steel mill that I went to, and just to give you a sense of scale, because it's a little hard to get it in this picture, look at that hook. I'm probably, I don't know, I mean, what do you think? Maybe that tall? Because that's probably up to about midsection on me. The little, so this thing right here could just smash me like a bug. It's kind of wild to see. And the steel mills, obviously being from Pennsylvania, and, it's like coal, steel, railroads, textiles, those are kind of our bread and butter here in terms of industry. There are a lot of places that I've gone to that are like that. Kerry Furnaces in the Rankin area out by Pittsburgh. That was part of Homestead Steel, which, again, I would love to tell you a lot more about, but it's a chapter in one of my books. This is the Palmerton Zinc Plant out in Palmerton, Pennsylvania. I don't know if any of you have ever been out in that area, but one of the things that is really notable about this is I took this in spring. And there was so much pollution from the heavy metals from this place that it's like if you were driving through that area, you have your kind of like rolling, tree-covered, lush Pennsylvania hills. And then it was just like the surface of Mars going in there. Like they would talk about people in their gravel lawns and everything like that. So they've done a lot of work to remediate the area since then. But, at the point that I was there, these are like fossilized plants because from what I read, at least, even the bacteria couldn't survive that broke down the plants. So I don't know how old that grass is. I don't know how long it's been there. And that's the inside of that building. That's the bag room. And again, I mean, one of the things that I really like in doing this is talking to people who are familiar with these places. I mean, if you look on particularly like the Facebook Abandoned America group or whatever, like a lot of times there will be people that are like, oh, my mom worked at that place, or, you know, this was what it was like when it was open, and I love that. I mean, that just makes my day. Because I can't be an expert in all of these places. I wish I could. This is a China factory. The screen's a little bit dark, so you can't see it, but I get a kick out of the chalk Beans was at this place. Somebody named Beans. I think that's a pretty cool name, actually. The Packard plant in Detroit, which is reputed to be the largest abandoned site in North America. It is absolutely gargantuan. I've been there a number of times. Actually, they are in the process of tearing this down now. So I don't know how long that's taking or where in the process they are. I don't live in Detroit, but I mean, I feel like, you know, these buildings were abandoned for over half a century. A lot of times people say, like, look at what bad condition they're in. It's like, no. They had people stealing the structural steel out of them, setting them on fire, breaking things, you know, the elements. They had all of this for over half a century, and that's how they look. I think they did pretty good, honestly. This one was very personal for me. My dad worked for Hershey Chocolate, and I photographed the original factory when they were tearing it down, and that was pretty. You know, that one got me, because a lot of times I'm going through something that's meaningful to somebody else, but like, I never worked at the Packard plant. My dad didn't work at the Packard plant. I didn't grow up with it. I didn't know what it was like when it was open. But the Hershey factory, I did. And, you know, I worked at one of my first jobs when I was a teenager was at Chocolate World. And so, you know, that was back when they had the little faux chocolate factory as a part of the ride. And so, like, going through this, it was sort of a weird deja vu where, like, I saw the fake thing, and then here's the real one. And as I'm doing this, on the other side of this wall, like, you could look out through a hole in it somewhere and see, you know, the construction equipment tearing the site down. This is the Huber Breaker, was the Huber Breaker in Ashley, PA. This was a coal crushing, cleaning, and sorting machine. So, and they made the famous blue coal. That was kind of their claim to fame. So what you would have is, you know, the coal would be brought up, actually probably over, yeah, it would be brought up over there, I think, because that's where Anyway, the point is it gets to the top of the building. I'm confused as to which side is what, but I will admit that and move on. The point is it would be brought up to the building. It would be cleaned and sorted. And a lot of times when you're talking about coal breakers, you're talking about like breaker boys who are like 12 or 13 or 14 that are doing this. And really kind of... moving on to the next thing. Yeah, here we go. This is not that building. I want to point that out for sort of full disclosure. But this is a coal breaker. And so this is kind of what you'd be seeing at the top of the building. And when you look at this picture, you see a bunch of very little boys dressed in jackets, because it's probably very cold up there at this point in time. And you got this guy standing over him, and he's got like a kid beating stick right there. You know, and it's not that long ago that this stuff happened. It's not as far away from us as we think it is. And so that's part of the reason why this is really important to me too, is just to see this and think, you know, this is probably, let me think about it. I mean, my grandfather would have been alive when stuff like this was going on, probably. And right here, again, not one of my like aesthetic pictures, but one of the more like sort of at least emotional for me. I mean, this is one of those little seats. Somebody has put a board on it that's covered with cloth, and when you think, like, this had to be so uncomfortable sitting in it all day, and they're so uncomfortable that they're like putting a board there to make it less uncomfortable. It's just kind of mind-blowing. Not in a great way either, you know, not a cheery mind-blowing. This right here is the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette that they recently redid the building. The Pittsburgh Post-Gazette moved out to the suburbs, but this was like their big in-the-city presence when they were in their heyday. This is the Venice Paper Mill that's in Manayunk. It actually is. I used to live in Manayunk when I lived in Philadelphia, so this was like right down on the river from there. Currently also being torn down, from what I'm told. This it's the Richmond Generating Station in Philadelphia. It's one of the largest open-air rooms ever built. I found out that in the time when it was built, when it was active, there would have been a chandelier hanging down from here, and this would have been spotless. You know, if you ever talk to, like, you know, industrial engineer guys or anything, they're like super proud of the fact that, like, you could eat off the machines when they ran the place, you know. The other thing that was kind of wild when I took this picture is that, you know, I'm standing up on these catwalks here, right, while I'm taking it. And I had just finished taking pictures down there. And while I was taking the picture, a big piece of concrete fell out of the ceiling and just tumbled end over end. And you would think, you would hope that there would be like a loud noise or something, like the concrete would be like, oh, hey, I'm coming, you know. Nothing. It made no noise until it slammed onto that part right there. Half of it broke off and crashed down into the sub-basement there. And I was just thinking, wow, I mean, I was standing there, that would have smashed me like a bug. I wouldn't have even known I was dead, you know, like I would have just not existed anymore. That's pretty wild. So yeah, anyway, that's I think probably the biggest risk when you talk about buildings like this, is going through the floor or the ceiling falling onto you, and then you can kind of get into more of the fun stuff like, you know, mercury or PCBs or dioxins or whatever in industrial places. You know, this was the Delaware Generating Station, also in Philadelphia. This is currently getting rehabbed, which is sweet. I'm really actually excited to see what that looks like when they're redoing it, because it looked like the plan that they had for it is really going to keep the turbine hall, which is the coolest part, like the sort of feel of that. They're not just completely redoing the building in a way that guts it. And they've got pretty far on it too, which is neat. This one was the Frank R. Phillips Power Station, also out in the Pittsburgh region. It was basically built in the 1940s to serve all of the industries that were being built out there. And surprise, surprise, after the war, the industry sort of started steadily declining, and they were like, oh, well, I guess we don't need this big power plant we just built. So it was mothballed, and that was torn down. That one's gone. I love power plants, I really do. This one was in Baltimore. The Gold Street plant, I believe they've torn down parts of that now. This was part of the Bethlehem Steel and Sparrows Point in Baltimore. I'm going to skip those real quick. We'll go on to let me just see where we're at time-wise. Okay, good. So this is a hotel that I went to that was up in the Catskills. It was in Sharon Springs. And one of the things I like to point out with this picture is, okay, so I'm an architectural photographer. And what it means when you know, kind of to be an architectural photographer is it's a very fussy way of shooting things. You note that I'm not doing the art school way, which is like lying in a corner in black and white and half of it's out of focus. No shade on that. If that's your style, that's totally cool, you know. But I like my line straight. I like everything to be in focus. I like everything to be exposed roughly properly. And part of the reason for that is because when you look at this picture and you look at that staircase, you know that that is not me doing funny stuff with an angle. That staircase is that crooked and that bad. And it didn't get better as I went up. It was actually a super scary, staircase, I guess, you know, if you must. But as I went up further in the building, like you could see parts where, you know, there were just huge cracks through the walls, or like the floor would kind of up here and then down and then over here. Really in bad shape. It actually collapsed on itself a couple of years ago. But yeah, this was originally a Sulphur Springs retreat, you know, so like people would come there to drink smelly water and bathe in it. And it's kind of wild. And that's our staircase in the next floor. So yeah, you can see this place, you probably wouldn't want to stay there anymore. That's pretty gross. One star review. TV's cool, you know. The other thing that I think is kind of wild about a lot of these, you know, particularly like the old resorts and stuff like that, is you look at the rooms and you're like, this is so small. You know, like you have two people staying in a room, and they're kind of like they would have to kind of, you know, I guess one of them would have to hop on the bed if the other one wanted to walk out. But yeah, so this was that's that. And a lot of people ask me what this is. I didn't put it there. That is a Polaroid of that mattress. It was just there. I don't know why. Another photographer, I guess. So this one is one of the ones that I used to do photo workshops. I haven't really since COVID because it's just been a pain in the neck and it kind of made me sad. But this place I'd been going to since like 2008 or 2009. I know the guy who runs this place. There have been some people online that have made up this huge, goofy story about it being the site of like a massive trolley disaster. It's not. It's a guy who basically, as they were closing down the streetcar lines, believed that, one day streetcars would make a comeback and he was going to have a salvage yard for it. And so he collected a bunch of T-line cars, Philadelphia cars, cars from Kansas. Really pretty cool. I love going out here. This was one of these places that I had been to so many times that I didn't even really feel like I needed to take pictures of it. I just would kind of go and hang out and eat the Subway hoagie on the subway, kind of thing. I actually did. I didn't even plan it that way. It just happened. But yeah, so I went out to this place for many years. This is what it looked like originally. These were bicentennial cars from Philadelphia. They were originally from Kansas. They brought them to Philly. Each of the cars had one of the original colony names. This one might have been, let's say, Rhode Island or something. And anyway, this is I would say this is it now. This is actually much better condition than it's in now. People would have painted over all of that, broken out all of the windows. It became internet famous, and people just trashed this place. I mean, just trashed it. It's so sad, and I know the guy who owns it. He is like the sweetest guy that you will ever meet on the face of the earth. I absolutely love him, and it breaks my heart to see that, I mean, because what are you going to do? This runs I think half a mile at least back into the forest. So, you're not going to put a hurricane fence up around that and install laser turrets or something to keep people out. It'd be cool, but, expensive. So anyway, yeah, these places have just been getting trashed, and that's one of the examples that I use a lot when I say, this is why it's good not to sort of share where places are. I'm going to... This is another resort that burned. A really interesting story on this one. Very sad, actually. It was a place that had a life as a resort, and then it kind of outlived that. And as a lot of resorts did, it kind of became a place where a lot of the former patrons retired to. And it burned. And the people who were running a condo thing hadn't adequately installed the sprinkler system, so the insurance company denied the claims after nobody was allowed to go back in and get their stuff. So they basically lost everything in their places because they weren't allowed to go back in. Then the insurance company was like, no, we're not going to reimburse you for any of that. Even though none of the people really knew that anyway, don't need to give you nightmares of things to think about, but it is very sad, I think. And this is the Jerry Lewis Ballroom. They claim to be the place that Jerry Lewis got his start at, but a lot of places claim that. So it's kind of a thing. If you know the hotels up there, that you would be like, oh, Woody Allen got discovered here, or whatever. Yeah, so you can kind of see in this picture right here that, I mean, this is somebody's family photos, If it weren't for the fact that I would probably get arrested and charged with burglary, I really have thought on a number of occasions about just going in there, hauling out as much stuff as I can. There's a Facebook group about this place and being like, is this your photo album? I don't know how you would do that. I don't know how you would do it. It just seems so, terrible that nobody has done it at this point. And people have gone through and royally trashed this place too. I mean, it's not, people were just like, oh, I'll respect that this awful thing happened. These people lost their stuff. Moving right along. Yeah, that's still, we're still looking at things from there. This is another resort that I went to. I'm going to kind of, just because of time, I'm going to move a little more quickly through this and skip some of these because I tend to talk real long about some of this stuff, and then I always put more things in presentations than I need because I'm always like, oh no, what if I don't have enough material? People are going to think I'm a fraud. So this is Holmesburg Prison, Philadelphia. Also recently did a podcast episode about this. Holmesburg is often confused with Eastern State Penitentiary. If any of you have not been to Eastern State Penitentiary, I wholeheartedly endorse it. They are awesome. You can go there and basically see what the first penitentiary was like, and they have a really good educational component. This is like its sister prison, and it was supposed to be the worst prison in Philadelphia. There are a lot of really, really atrocious stories that I could tell you about it, but I feel like I've told you a few atrocious stories already. So the one that I'll stick with is just they did a lot of unethical medical testing on prisoners in here, like Johnson & Johnson, Dow Chemicals, the U.S. Army. Did these things where, for example, they would do what's called patch tests, where they would see if, a household solvent or like a cosmetic product would burn your skin, but you want to make sure that it won't, so you put a really high concentration of it and then have people leave that patch on for like 2 weeks, and as you can imagine, that's not fun. That's not a thing that, and there was really quite a controversy that hasn't died down to this day. In fact, the guy, Albert Kligman, who is kind of called the father of modern dermatology, like this was his place and that's what he was doing. And when he came here, he said, and I don't remember the exact words, but the part that really sticks out was he said about how there were acres of skin to experiment on. And, this was kind of like against the Nuremberg Code that was developed. It's not really, so it's a fairly significant prison in that sense, and that's what I talk about in the podcast episode with somebody who wrote a book about it. This prison is in Essex. It was designed by John Haviland, who's the one who did, give me a sec, Eastern State Penitentiary. He did a lot of prisons, actually. He did, I think he did Western Penitentiary, too. He was known as the man who jailed America, which is like kind of a heck of a nickname, right? A lot of times people ask me about whether I run into squatters in places like this or other people. Usually no. This place, people lived in it. And it was really sad, actually, because like whatever your politics are, wherever you're at in life, let's not get into it, but like whatever you think about making bad life choices, I would hope that we could kind of all agree that living in a falling apart, rust-covered prison in the dead of winter as it's absolutely freezing is not a thing that like humans should have to do, I feel. And so as I was taking these pictures, normally if I will, kind of like see something move or like hear a sound or whatever, it's usually like a pigeon. I usually look over and hop and there's a pigeon. I'm like, oh, whatever. In this place, it was more like I'd hear that, I'd look over and like on the second tier of a cell block behind me, somebody's just standing there in the shadows watching me, which is like pretty spooky. And then they would kind of fade back into one of the hallways, and then like 2 minutes later, I'd be like, oh, there's somebody over there, And I kind of don't blame them because like this is their stuff here. If I lived in a prison, I wouldn't want somebody messing with my stuff. But the thing that really breaks my heart about this, there are two things. One is there was used needles over here, like somebody had just been using them. And over here you have like the little stuffed bear. It's just like the saddest thing in the world to me. That's another prison. I always think it's kind of wild that I can be like, look at all these prisons I've been to. That's not usually like a thing you brag about, right? This is Western State Penitentiary. This is going to be the next big feature on my website. I'm currently working on it now. I just read a book about, from a guy who spent like 12 or 13 years in there. He's actually the guy who, if you know your Western Pennsylvania history, he was an anarchist who tried to assassinate Frick and got sentenced to this place when he failed to do it. Yeah, so that's this. This was also in a number of movies and TV shows like Mindhunter. They did some filming here. If you ever saw the movie or the series Escape from Dannemora, which was really, really good. They did a lot of filming here too. Be happy when you watch it that you're not my wife, because I was like, ooh, I was there. And she's like, all right, just shut up. I'm trying to watch it. Like, okay, that's fair. So yeah, when you see the inside of these prisons, I think, it kind of really gives you an idea of just how, there are always little details like this, you know, where you're like, oh, that's so if somebody pushes you off one of the upper balconies, it doesn't kill you, it just probably breaks several bones as you land on this grate, you know. Yeah, it was really spooky reading that book and going to this place. Oh, and that is one of the things that I thought was a wild little, I was in the shower area, as one is, and there was this soap there, and first thing I'm thinking is, like, wow, big house. Like, they don't even let people have the shower. You know, you can't even, like, maybe think to, you know, just get lathered up and kind of forget for a minute. Your soap's like, no, you're in prison, dude. And I was thinking, what a souvenir to have. I bet the, you know, like I got in with the state, I bet nobody would care if I took that soap, right? I could take that home and it'd be I'm not a souvenir taker, mind you. I take pictures, but like if I could get permission to do it, why not take a bar of soap? And so then I'm taking pictures and thinking about it, and then I'm like, where have you been, little soap? I don't think I'm going to take you home. I think I'm just going to get a picture. So this also was one of the areas in there. Real bizarre, by the way. Real bizarre. Really creepy. I mean, it just bothers me that here I'm in an area where, okay, so these are like rusty apertures on the doors to slide food in for when you're not letting people out of their cells. And then you have little cartoon dolphin, cartoon seahorse, cartoon turtle. Like, what the heck? That's not... They don't go together. That just the little dolphin makes things even creepier. And that was the one room at the top of the stairs. And I have to say that really was one of those ones where you see it and you're like, whoa, that's intense. What's going on here? And I talked to the security guard about this for a little bit. And yes, it does look like somebody just all their blood, maybe a couple of other people's blood is on there. But, you know, we sort of determined, first of all, he said, having been a CEO, that, you know, they probably would make somebody clean up after that. Second of all, it probably wasn't blood because it's way too much and it didn't have quite the right tint. So after talking a bit, he thought maybe it would be Kool-Aid. You know, and so the point that we got to was maybe somebody did this as kind of like a little fun Easter egg for somebody coming in after the prison's closed that had been there, and the guards were just like, whatever, this place is closing, I don't care, you know. Probably was done right beforehand, but anyway, still disturbing. So churches, and again, I'm being mindful of time here. I want to do a Q&A, so I am going to zip a bit. This is a abandoned synagogue in Chicago. Absolutely beautiful building. This was in Vermont. It was called the Cement Tent. And I would not say it is one of the prettiest churches I've been to, but it was a very unique one. You know, I have not seen buildings like that are this weird brutalist pyramid, you know. This was one of my favorites in, it was St. Bonaventure in Philadelphia. I tried for years to get into this place and only managed to do it as they were tearing the church down. A lot of times I think, you know, you tell people about places getting torn down, they're like, oh, that's sad, but like it's kind of a little different seeing it, isn't it? You know? Yeah, so moving right along, Braddock, PA, out in western Pennsylvania, the whole floor of this one caved in, it's gone, so you cannot go and get this picture of it anymore because it's ruined. Old theaters, this one is one of my absolute favorites, also one that I'm probably going to feature really soon on my website. That's the lobby of it. I mean, you think about it, like, they don't make places like this anymore, you know? I kind of was brought up in the, like, shoebox. Did I tap this? I did, okay. I was like, what happened? Okay, whew. Okay, so that's the lobby of that. This one was another, it was a double theater. Actually, there's another theater on top of this one. It is that steep. And really kind of mind-blowingly steep, I would say. Gave me a bit of vertigo to be here and taking this shot. This was another one in Charleroi, PA, that is now no longer with us. But that was kind of a cool, little more plain one. This was in an abandoned mall, the largest mall in the United States before the Mall of America was built. And this place was the General Cinemas Theater. And I'm not normally a fan of these sorts of places, but what I thought was really cool about it was this place closed not too long after the mall opened. It became kind of absorbed into a men's clothing store, and they used like the lobby of this theater for like storage, and they didn't even go in there. And like this place then was pretty much not cracked open until it was being torn down decades later. So it was really interesting to see it. Also, that shaft of light I was like really happy about, because that lasted for about 2 minutes and then it was gone. Ellis Island, this is the autopsy theater. And again, I want to be mindful of time. This is the hospital where they cured tuberculosis. I realize there's multi-drug resistant strains of it, but like this is the reason 1 in 5 people that you know haven't died of it. This is a pediatric ward in a more modern hospital. That's the emergency room in that same hospital. Malls, so that's the one I was telling you about that was the largest mall in the US. That's the Randall Park Mall. It's now an Amazon distribution facility, which is, you know, kind of like rubbing salt in the wound a little bit, I would imagine. This was another abandoned mall that I photographed. This is an Elks Lodge that was out in western Pennsylvania. That's been torn down too. The Dunkin' Donuts across the street is still standing though. So that's good if you got to keep one building, right? This was the interior of that place, and that was a dumb luck find. People ask me a lot of times, how do you find these places? Networking, research, dumb luck. This was a dumb luck one. And when I came up to this place and by myself, the doors were just open, and so I was like, okay, I'll go in and take a look. You don't have to twist my arm, old building. Got up to the top floor, and I'm by myself, and this room is actually much darker in real life. I brightened it a bit so you can actually see it, because like, what's the point of showing you a picture if you can't see anything? And there's this shaft of light coming down, almost like God is just pointing his finger right down, like at that thing on the wall right there. And I was like, what is that? You know, and I'm walking closer and closer. That's what it was. And just as I saw that, and I'm emotionally dealing with this fact, my foot went through the floor. And so I did the smart thing at that point, which was stay there and photograph it for as much time as I had. And the reason it was smart was because that's what it was like the next time I came back, which was 3 months later. They were in the process of tearing it down. So I'm very glad that I did the stupid thing. I am not a good example to live your life by. That's the Catskill Game Farm, actually up very close to where I live now. That was like a super popular, it was the largest privately owned zoo in the United States, actually. Let's keep moving here. That's the Catskill Game Farm. That's their little mini golf kiosk. This is the abandoned Six Flags in New Orleans. That was pretty much abandoned after Katrina destroyed it, and it was a pond for a few weeks, you know. That was a lot of steps. I'm afraid of heights, I will tell you that, but I am also really stubborn. And so I was going up this, and I was like, okay, well, maybe this is good. Maybe I'll take a picture from here. And I was thinking, but I'll know I didn't go up to the top. And then at one point, like, the lens cap on my camera popped off and just fell like Wile E. Coyote style down into the trees way below me, and I was like, well, that's cool. Good. I actually found it, which is improbable, but I did. If I were making this story up, I would not say that I found it, but I did root around in the trees beneath this thing until I found it, which is a bit of a miracle. And I didn't get eaten by an alligator, which is also cool. Bodie, California, which is, you could really argue about whether Bodie's abandoned. It's a state park. It gets tons of people that visit it every day, but it is in a state of arrested decay, and it's absolutely gorgeous. I love Bodie. It is a magical, magical place. See the little bird up on the top of the... And so I did a night photo shoot out there too. I am going to... Let me just see here. I'm going to skip through the homes because you guys know what homes look like. Abandoned houses here. I wonder if I can do like a fast. Let me see. Yeah, that's Lincoln Way in western Pennsylvania. I don't know that I'm going to be able to go. That's the SS United States, one of the last surviving ocean liners, one of two. I think the Queen Mary II is the only other one out there. That one's in Philadelphia. I'm going to skip over this part. If I wouldn't have talked earlier about some of the other stuff, I would have told you about people I love, like Piranesi. If you ever see a building like that, you just call me. I don't care. It could be in the middle of the night. Hubert Robert, which was one of his, the point of all of this, by the way, is just to sort of say that the interest in ruins has been a very long-standing thing. I mean, Piranesi was like late 1700s, you know. Robert was somebody who was his work was very popular, and he was in so well with like royals and the aristocracy of France that when the French Revolution happened, they tossed him in the Bastille, I believe it was, and they executed him, except, whoops, they killed the wrong guy. So he managed to live through the revolution, became one of the original board of the Louvre. Which is pretty cool, you know, little connection there. But he was one of many people who was into ruins. So this was like, you know, a kind of a big deal. I certainly am far from the first. And one of the things that I think is neat when you look at this, which is the demolition of a French chateau by Robert, you can see, I feel like there's a kind of a sadness about it, you know, about the loss of this grand building. And maybe I'm projecting, but like I feel like that's a common thread that you see with people who have this style of art, is a need to capture things before they're gone forever. This is Caspar David Friedrich. I love this. It's really cool. Monastery in the Snow. Clarence John Laughlin. We'll just keep moving. Nope, that's not the way I want to move. I want to go the other way. Let's keep doing it. Keep doing it. Come on, buddy. You can get there. Maybe you can't get there. I don't know. Thank you. We'll just keep going quick through this. This is Richard Nickel. I'd be happy to tell you about him at another point, but like I said, we'll just kind of keep moving along here. Yeah, I think this thing is toast. Yeah, I wish Richard Nickel actually died in the old Chicago Stock Exchange when it collapsed, and he was in there for 28 days before they were able to recover his body, so the threat is real. Moving on to the very end of this, you know, the end point that I'm going to sort of stick with is I think there are a lot of things that ruins have to tell us that are really important. You know, we view ourselves as like in a society that is making progress. Is it always making progress? Is it progress if you let that happen to a public school, or you tear down a clothing factory that, you know, tons of people were employed at and give them an Arby's to work at? You know, I always pick on Arby's for some reason, but they have good horsey sauce. But, you know, is it progress if you take these buildings, and I'm not saying we should go back to having institutions and asylums, but like, what do we really have that is helping people in the communities right now? Is it adequate? You know, I feel like in looking at the past and contrasting it with the present, you really can kind of determine whether something is, you know, a direction that a good direction to go in, I guess. I sort of got a little, you know, I mean, to me, it's just very sad to see a building that was created like this for the public in this condition. And this is a public school in Philadelphia. It was really a prestigious school, too. You know, built at a lot of cost and with a lot of hopes, and it was for the public to get an education, which was kind of like a radical and controversial thing at that time. And that was it as it was being torn down, that same room. So, yeah, anyway, this is the part where I would tell you about workshops I do, but I've been on workshop hiatus. So the fun thing is I was planning all these overseas workshops. I went out and did all these, you know, like India, for example. I went to, that's still India. Went to Romania, Georgia, Chernobyl. I had all these things planned, and my big launch year was 2020. Yeah, that went well. So anyway, these are, I guess the point of this now is just that I did photograph a lot of things abroad too. Even though I'm a band in America, I did travel other places. And yeah, this is Romania. Look at this church, by the way. I mean, look at the paintings that are on the, it's such a little thing, but like the paintings are just so gorgeous in it and also kind of creepy. But moving along, if I can go one more, that's me. I'm Matthew Christopher. Thank you very much for staying here. If you'd like, I will be down there. I will have books. They're like $45. I can do that. But I also want to take your questions. And thank you very much for coming and listening to my presentation and checking out my work. I hope you enjoyed it. Well, thank you.